So let's see the White Roses distort this verse to the opposite meaning.
It is the duty of every Muslim to keep striving until all governments have been converted to Sharia law.
So not only does the White Roses referenced verse have absolutely nothing to do with Sharia, but it even offers persecutors forgiveness if they cease trying to force their religion on Muslims. The White Roses haven't merely taken the verse out of context, they've distorted the meaning to the exact opposite of what the verse says. And the fear-mongering about Sharia from the White Roses is that non-Muslims would be forced to adhere to Islamic law. But that is a direct contradiction to what the Quran says. Let the people of the gospel judge by that which God has revealed therein. Reverence for the original Torah and gospel is apparent throughout the Quran. But this idea of rejecting all other religious laws is very familiar. Where have we seen it before? Now I remember. The White Roses are confusing the Quran with what Paul said.
But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before, so now I say again, if anyone is preaching to you a gospel contrary to the one you received, let him be accursed.
Now that's what I call religious intolerance. The White Roses' first false claim is that the Quran supposedly abrogated peaceful and tolerant verses with violent verses later. From the White Roses' video description, following the link to their other source, we can see that the reference for the Quran's supposed abrogation of peaceful and tolerant verses is not from a single Islamic scholar or site, but from their own dishonest misrepresentations. First, they point out Quran chapter 2 verse 256 that there is no compulsion in religion in Islam, which they expect us to believe has been abrogated by which verse? Yup, you guessed it, the same verse we just showed to forgive persecutors if they stop trying to force their religion on Muslims. And not surprisingly, this hyperlink leads to 10 translations of the verse, not one of which contains their false translation of "fight them until only Allah is worshipped." The verse about no compulsion in religion was revealed to prevent some Muslims from trying to revert their children back to Islam after having vowed them to Judaism through a pre-Islamic custom. This verse cannot be abrogated as clarified by the end of the verse. And he who rejects false deities and believes in Allah has grasped a firm handhold. In other words, you're not allowed to force religion on people because it's an internal matter of belief. How on earth can we force people to believe something that they don't believe in? Look, there's nothing controversial about the concept of abrogation in the Quran, where a temporary law is replaced with a new law. An example in Islam is the gradual prohibition of wine for Muslims, where being intoxicated during prayer was prohibited, which was followed by the outright prohibition of wine. On the other hand, abrogation in Christianity is quite controversial. For example, even though the Messiah Jesus, whom Muslims revere, taught the law of Moses and the commandments,
"Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law, until all is accomplished."
However, the Church radically abrogated the teachings of Jesus and the law of Moses by following the teachings of Paul.
For we hold that one is justified by faith apart from works of the law. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes.
Oh really? I wonder what the Messiah Jesus would have to say about that.
Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven.
And according to the Messiah Jesus, that makes Paul and the Christian church least in the kingdom of heaven. And the fear-mongering about abrogation from the White Roses is that the Quran requires Muslims to make the jihad and kill or convert non-Muslims. Now, the greater jihad, which is defined struggle, is against the ego for spiritual purification and growth. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "The best jihad is that of speaking a word of truth to an unjust ruler." In the Quran, armed struggle is only allowed against an aggressor or to secure for people the freedom of religion. The Quran says,
وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ جِهَادًا كَبِيرًا.
and struggle against them with it, i.e. with the Quran, a grand struggle. So this grand jihad is explaining the Quran to non-Muslims. How else are we going to use the Quran to make jihad? By throwing it at people, hitting people over the head with it? In conclusion, being deceptive to promote a religion, intolerance of other religious laws, and the controversy of abrogation are big problems for Paul and the Christian Church, but not for the Quran. And based on how the White Roses dishonestly distorted their own references, it's really no wonder they couldn't quote a single source or Quranic verse throughout their entire video to support their ridiculous claims. It's really funny how the White Roses accuse Muslims of lying to promote our religion by lying through their teeth about Muslims and Islam. The White Roses are insulting the intelligence of their own audience.
We sincerely hope you enjoyed this episode of Islam for Dummies, and we hope to see you again next time.